All minds and hearts on one accord. Jacoby, are we ready?
We are ready.
Good evening, and welcome to A Father's Love with a resounding question. What are you communicating to your children? My name is Sabrina Harris, and I'm completely honored to be a part of such an amazing forum, especially during such a time as this. God is truly amazing, and He's blessed us tremendously. And we want to start this off. We've had prayer behind the scenes, but we want to reverence God in this moment. If you will all just pause and bow your head. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for who you are and what you are to each of us in our individual capacity, as well as all of us collectively. We thank you for those who have gathered in the name of the betterment of society. We thank you for all that you've gifted and embedded within us, whether it be experiential, whether it be wisdom, book knowledge, or whatever we have to share tonight, so that we can somehow be better in our role as parents, as citizens, all across the board. We ask you to bless each featured panelist. Give them the words that you would like for your people to have. Give them the substance and the richness that you need for it to be translated over so that you get all the glory through this. And may we all be somehow better for this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I want to say that our males in today's society are a commodity. Nothing really happens as far as the human nature of how all things work, as far as generations and moving on and processing things and birthing children. The male is the start of it. The Bible defines the male as the head. And that's one of the things I had to take off of my table a couple of years ago. Because I used to say, as far as parenting was concerned, that there was really no roadmap. There was really no guide. You kind of figured it out as you went along. But as I really got into the Bible, I began to realize that pretty much everything we need to rear, guide, and just push our children along in a positive and productive manner, it's really being orchestrated by the Bible. So in addition to all of the wealth of information that you're going to receive this evening, there are going to be 10 essential scriptures that I'm going to lay out over a period to help you understand that just about anything you can encounter with parenting a child, the Bible has some reference, some scripture, and some level of guidance regarding it. I want to thank CEO Jacoby Waters of the Young Men of Distinction, first of all, for being obedient to God's vision in this regard. I want to thank you for the prayer and the effort and the spirit of excellence that you've walked this out. I've been able to see this behind the scenes, and I'm tremendously impressed with you. And I want to also say, I give salute from the House of Love Billionaires Incorporated, where I'm the CEO and executive director, and also the Cultural Pearls of Wisdom show, where we emphasize mental health awareness, positive psychology, holistic wellness approaches, anything that we can do, not I can do, not you can do, we can do to be a better person and be a better part of this society. And with this, I'm now going to strategically go to each panelist this evening. And the opportunity at this point is to allow you to introduce yourself and share to the audience and with us whatever you'd like to know about yourself. I'm going to start with you, CEO Jacoby Waters.
Good evening, great people. Good evening. I am Jacoby Waters. I am, as what Ms. Sabrina said, I am the founder, CEO, and president of Young Men young men of distinction, and I'm a father of 3 young men of my own. I have a 15, soon to be 16, 7 years old, and I have a 2-year-old. So I am just honored that, the Lord lead me to put on a discussion like this for the fathers. And this was something that I wanted the world to kind of highlight us as Black men, especially during this time, to highlight us and, just show, pay homage to you great young men that's on this panel this evening.
Thank you, Jacoby. Now I'm going to go to Joe A. Simmons. Mr. Simmons, if you would kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sabrina, for introducing me. My name is Joe A. Simmons. I'm one of the original board members for Young Men of Distinction. So I was instrumental in helping Jacoby, get his vision off the ground. I'm a father of 1, and I take fatherhood very seriously, especially since, I was raised by a single parent mom. So when I decided to have children, I wanted to make sure I was very instrumental in being in their lives and making an impact and making a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And now we're going to go to Devon Lewis Buchanan. If you'd introduce yourself for us, Mr. Buchanan.
Hey, how you doing, Sabrina? Thank you. Again, just wanted to shout out Jacoby, man, for putting this together. So powerful to be amongst these gentlemen and fathers. My name is Devon Lewis Buchanan. I'm a master's level social worker and therapist here. Also the founder and CEO of Inspire Youth Services, organization that's geared towards providing behavioral health access to marginalized communities, especially children of color. I'm a father of 1. I have a young son, and it's an honor to be able to have this discussion and to be able to talk a little bit about our experiences as fathers, because I think sometimes that doesn't always get highlighted.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis Buchanan. And now I'd like to go to Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin. Pastor, if you'd introduce yourself for us, please.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be on with you this evening. Reverend Dr. J.R. Thicklin. I am the president and CEO of Destiny by Choice. I'm also the president of the Palm Beach County Clergy Alliance, and I am definitely proud to be here today because I'm a father of 4 biological sons, 1 biological daughter, but I'm also the father to many. I am very proud as I come to you from Cleveland, Ohio tonight, because I'm here with my 3rd grandson. And this is significant as the legacy goes on. 3 grandsons, everyone range from 15 months to 15 days old. And we're very grateful for that. Jacoby, I salute you and all that you do in Young Men of Distinction. And I'm glad to be able to share this platform with these young men. I'm proud. I seem to be this elder statesman here today. And it's a very special moment because 38 years ago, I came to Palm Beach County as an 18-year-old young man. And it's just amazing to see where life has brought us.
I want to say congratulations to you yet again on continuing the legacy, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to go now to Pastor Bram and allow you opportunity to introduce yourself and share what you'd like with the masses.
Yes, I'm a local pastor here in Riviera Beach. My name is Angus Bram III, and I am very proud to be on here with these young men doing this at an early age, just taking the community by storm and putting your stamp on life, and just making Blackness and fatherhood look good. I'm proud of you guys, and I'm very, very, very glad to be on this panel. I'm the father of 4, 32-year-old, 28-year-old, 27-year-old, and an 11-year-old, all girls. And I take pride in the way I raised them, to let them know that I love them and took care of them, and they shouldn't accept anything less from any gentleman.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I know your story, and it's absolutely an amazing and powerful one. So as much as you salute the other feature panelists, I salute you as well. Thank you for being here. I want to say welcome to Adrian Carter. We waited for you, sir, and we do understand that things happen, so thank you for joining us. Just so you understand, right now we're allowing everyone to introduce themselves. We're going to go now to Mr. Pierre Paul, and afterwards we'll give you 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the community. Mr. Frankie
Amazing.
Pierre Paul, please go ahead and share who you are with the community.
Amazing evening. My name is Frank Pierre Paul. I am the founder and CEO of A Different Shade of Love, where we are based in Lake Worth and showering our love and our different shade of love in the community at John Prince Park, Tent City and surrounding areas. I am a father of 5. God called home 3. So presently I have a daughter, which is 3 years old, and I have a son, which is 1 year old. I'll be able to elaborate a little bit more about the other 3 that God has called home. But in the meantime, it is a privilege. It is an honor to be in the midst of greatness. Privilege and an honor to be in the midst of people that are like-minded as myself. And growing up, this is what I've always dreamed of. So Jacoby Waters, thank you so much for adhering to your calling. Back to you, Ms. Sabrina.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say to each of you, even so far before I pull Adrian into this, I am so enamored and I'm so honored to be sitting in this space because I'm receiving from men who have not only subscribed to a higher standard, but you've walked the path towards a higher standard. I get richness here, I get substance here, and I am truly honored as a woman to be in the midst. So I just want to say thank you. I don't believe that we extend ourselves enough or give enough credit for our men who take on so much to be productive in the roles that you've assumed. So I want to thank you. And with that, I want to switch to the multifaceted and beloved Adrian N. Carter. Would you please introduce yourself this evening?
Let's see. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Jacoby, I've enjoyed you as a person from meeting you and from coming out to the Empowerment Conference. Sabrina, we go back a few years now, and your support, and likewise in brotherhood and sisterhood, I appreciate you. Gentlemen on the panel, thank you all for being patient with me. The irony of this being a father's focused panel is that I had situations with my kids and I had to respond to it. And I was like, it's about to be 7 o'clock. What you want me to do now? So it's like, so I had to go tend to that. They're good now. They're situated, but I'm a father of 3. I have a boy, an eldest son, a middle daughter, and a youngest son, 11, 9, and 7. Of course, they are my world. They're amazing. They're not that happy with me right now because I'm going to make them work this summer. And so my eldest is trying to negotiate with me about what they are able to do throughout the day, but they're not going to sit home all day on YouTube and Netflix. and that's what they're mad about. So they've been tasked with coming up with a daily schedule. And we're talking about what times are going to be allotted for what. So they kind of feel some kind of way with me right now, but I'm happy to be here. I love talking about fatherhood and what that means, because being a father is everything. And when I have another opportunity to speak, I want to share how I've been excited about being a father from when I was a kid. So look forward to the conversation.
I want to thank you very much for choosing to be a father first, because if you had done anything different from what you did than go attend to your children, then I would have certainly had a problem. We would have had a conversation later. So thank you for being a father first, and thank you for sharing. So for the audience, clearly, more than likely, there's going to be a part 2 to this. We're going to try our best to keep it to an hour this evening. If our cup runneth over, please hang on in there with us. It's really going to be good. But what I want to do is set some ground rules so you understand the flow of how this is going to happen. First of all, there is a pool of questions. It's like a jambalaya mixture of different questions that have been presented. Each panelist is going to be directed a question. They're going to have 2 minutes to respond for the sake of time. Once they respond, they're going to end and pass it back to me. Once they pass it back to me, I'm going to give any other panelists an opportunity to expound or add to what was said within the 2-minute time parameter. And then we're moving on. You're also going to hear me infuse biblical principles. I said earlier that just about everything that you can encounter inside of parenting, the Bible speaks to it. And I'm going to share a few with you this evening. So does anyone have any questions before we get started? Gentlemen, when I come and open the floor for anyone else who wants to add or expound, if you'd simply raise your hand. We're not going to do it in Zoom, but just raise your hand physically, and then I'll know how to call on you and go from there. So with all minds and hearts on one accord, I want to take a few minutes and let's be respectful. The civil unrest, the social injustice, and different things that we're encountering has put the spotlight on our African-American men. And I have in this panel some amazing ones, and you're rearing them, and then grandsons and all of these things. So let's give a moment of salute. Rest in power to George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, the female version, Breonna Taylor, and for the list of those who have suffered so we can rise. Rest in power. God bless you. Power to the people. This is a moment. This is a teachable moment. And from this, we shall overcome and we shall rise. God bless you. So we're going to start our line of questioning with CEO Jacoby Waters. I want you to really ingest the question, digest it, and do your best to give us a comprehensive, well-rounded answer in 2 minutes. If you need more time than that, please say that, and we'll be more than happy to try and accommodate, but our baseline is 2 minutes. So Jacoby, what do you feel is the role of the Black father and the responsibility he has to our community?
Thank you for that question. The role of the Black father is to be the pillar, the provider for his family, is to be, I like to say the woman is the rock of the family, but the father is that foundation. And without, the father, the foundation can be shaky. But, I see as our role as fathers is to set that tone, that foundation with our children. So when they grow up in the world, they can always reflect back to their foundation, which was their father, which he instilled in them.
Okay, we thank you for that. So pillar, provider. Is there anything you would express to the Black male right now as far as the things going on in the community, the protesting and different things that are happening? Is there any message do you have for the men or the male youth as we rise and they rise up in particular in this moment?
My message is simple. We need to come together and love each other. Our male ego needs to be put to the side, and we need to celebrate each other. That's why when I was paying homage to all these great young men that's on this panel with me, there was no ego. There was no, I got to make sure I'm the best. It was not the case. It was more so, everybody that's on this panel do amazing things, and I'm a big fan. I cheer them on. For instance, with Devon and Frankie, when they were at Project 12 and they were in the calendar, I was there with my boys and I cheered them on. It was no competition. It was more of celebrating my brothers. And, for me, that's a huge accomplishment. So like I said, that's what we need to do, is just celebrate each other.
I love when you said put egos aside, because egos can be very detrimental. And even for what we have established, it could serve to destroy it. So I agree with you very much. Is there anyone else on the panel who would like to expound on the fact of the sense of responsibility that is attached to the Black male in today's society? Yes, Adrian.
We're definitely at a crucial time with all of what's been going on politically, socially, and in our criminal justice system, our legal system, just all of our systems, and how corporate America is responding. I think what's imperative for Black men, particularly fathers, to do is to be vocal. And being vocal, I believe, is modeling and being an example of how to appropriately be vocal in a situation like this. I think it's a great time for us to be able to teach our young ones how to use their voices properly, in whatever capacity that may be. And a lot of it is, like Jacoby, I agree, you got to put the ego to the side. And it's also a time to be outspoken and show your children how to use their voice appropriately. If ever than before, now is a great time to use your platform to speak up.
I can greatly appreciate your answer, and I love the coined phrase, use your voice appropriately vocal. I love that. If someone were sitting there saying appropriately vocal, what does that mean? How would you define appropriately vocal? Adrian.
Appropriately vocal is, it's don't become a part of the problem. So if you're going to go out there and, take a garbage can and throw it to a window, that's not appropriately, I don't think that's something that I want my children to have known. Okay, my father was out there throwing garbage cans into windows and breaking up businesses. But appropriately vocal, do you write to your senator? Do you pick up the phone and make some phone calls? Do you make up, I saw children out there protesting along with, whoever the guardian that was out. If you're comfortable enough in doing that and you want to make up a sign and hold it up or take a picture and post it on social media, having a conversation with your children about what's going on and why it's important to be a part of the conversation. Those are things that I think are appropriate ways to use your voice.
I love that. And I love that you also infuse that there should be a level of guidance. Even communication itself is misconstrued because there are three essential parts. We speak, the message is transferred, but a lot of people miss it. There should be a check-in to be sure that what you spoke was understood. So a lot of people speak, transfer the message and continue on, and we don't understand why conflict arises. It's because the message was simply not understood or it was rejected. If your message is not received, which you truly have no control over, but it's paraphrasing and checking in and making sure that it lands where you desire for it to be. So I love that, and I'm going to take that, appropriately vocal. Thank you. Any other panelists, would you like to speak to this moment? Yes, Frankie.
So I would like to say to our young fathers, it's a privilege to serve you guys, especially where I work at right now. I service a lot of young individuals that are fathers as well. And I just want to say that it's okay not to be okay, during these times. It's okay to cry. It's okay to voice your concerns. So it's okay to voice your opinions. Because what I've realized growing up as well, sometimes, the stigma is, or the perspective is, as a man, as a father, you got to be strong. You can't show emotion, because if you show emotion, if you cry, if you show tears, it's a sense of you being weak or that you failed yourself. I just want to put it out there that it felt so good for me to cry and to look at my wife and say, babe, I really don't know the answer to this. I really don't know how to feel. I really don't know how to act. And how can I teach my 1-year-old son that, this world is changing? How can I speak to him about that? Always ask questions, especially to leaders and to individuals that you feel are pillars, or you feel individuals that are, up there. You look up to them. Always ask questions, because at the end of the day, it's your legacy that matters. So put that ego aside, especially how Mr. Waters said, put that ego aside and, always feel the vulnerability to just ask questions and not to be okay. So back to you, Ms. Sabrina.
Thank you, Frankie. I always say it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way, which means we have to do something about not being okay. And Devon, understanding your mental health background, and also Reverend Thicklin, I'm going to ask you both to speak to this, because what Frankie brought up was a very valid point. I believe a lot of men, especially from back in the day, have been taught to be that pillar and that sense of almost concrete stance in today's society. When I cried when I saw the video of George Floyd, I don't know anybody who could not really resonate with that and not have some level of emotion. So how do we put it into perspective? Devon, I'll come to you first with that.
So Sabrina, you asked, how do we put those emotions in perspective? Or
Yes, how do we put into perspective for the male that it's okay to have these emotions? And anything that you would say to them to encourage them, not necessarily that they have to be a bag of water at any particular time, but to just own how they feel and be true to that.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sabrina. So I think it's just, you know, for me as a clinician, you know, I hold space for specifically young Black men. And you know, with that space, it comes opportunities for vulnerability, right? So as a clinician, of course, I like to always lead from the stance of being able to give people the emotional language they need to express themselves. Because often we don't come equipped with that as men. We don't come equipped with being able to express more than maybe 5 emotions that we were given. You know what I mean? These were acceptable communication or expression that we were given, and we were told that this is all we have. And so to be able to expound on that and be able to give them the language to be able to express themselves, and like, you know, Frankie was saying, you know, words like being vulnerable, right? Being able to cry, being able to have more than just anger, right? Although anger is a part of our emotional spectrum, but it, you know, again, there's layers. You know, anger is a secondary emotion, and so as much outrage as we had about the George Floyd and many others, you know, I understand that there's layers to that, right? There's fear in there. You know what I mean? There's shame that the fact that, you know, if somebody was to see a video of us on there, that we couldn't even protect ourselves. So there's layers to, you know, the outrage and the anger that we you know, often display and that people often see.
I love that. A very good answer. And I also love that all of these answers, you're all emphasizing that there needs to be some level of education, that there needs to be some level of teaching and guiding, and not assuming that an individual knows how to control his or her emotions, or they really know how to show up in that regard. And Reverend Thicklin, I want you to speak to this as well, but I'd like if you'd be more direct. And what guidance would you give to a man who's struggling to outwardly display his emotions?
Well, I would say to that man, number one, is the fact that, once again, it's okay to feel that way. I think so often we've been told what we couldn't do, we can't do, what is not politically correct, what is not socially acceptable. But you have to be true to your feelings. You know, if you cut me, I bleed. Seeing something of that nature happen, you can't help but to inwardly reflect on yourself. As a man and as a father, I think about the fact of my sons. I think about the fact of, you know, every day I get up, and although they're all respectful grown men now, I think about their well-being. I think about, you know, how they react in certain situations. So what I say to men is that transparency and vulnerability is really a strength. It's not a weakness. Tears was never meant to be a sign of weakness. Tears is emotional release. It's all right to release tears. I believe that we have to debunk old masculine theories and myths that we have accepted for years. I believe that we have to demonstrate it. For instance, we have to recognize the fact that if men were not meant to cry, God would have never given us tear ducts and tear glands. Surely men was not meant to have babies, so God didn't give us ovaries. He didn't give us anything that we wasn't meant to have. So because it was meant for us to be able to cry, to be able to express, to be able to understand, in order to build up, sometimes we have to break down. We have to break down and admit that hurt me to the core. And so as a man, I need to be able to have that safe space to do so. And I really need some support system around other men that understand that me being vulnerable doesn't make me weak. It literally makes me strong and in touch with my emotions. To not be in touch with my emotion would really be a danger, that I have no empathy and that perhaps I'm not in touch with reality.
Oh, very well presented and very strategically and well done. I have to say also that to cry and purge ourselves is very important. It's a release of the toxicity and anything inside of us that is not supposed to be left there residual. It's a good way to get it out. Sometimes I've just sat and had a good cry because I just needed to have a good cry. It was just something tremendously overwhelming within me. And I had to tell some people around me at certain points, it's nothing in particular wrong. I just feel the need to purge. So I so honor men who are willing to do that in their space in that moment when they feel that it's relevant and not having an issue with that. So we're going to segue now, and I'm going to start with Pastor Bram. But I want each of you to answer this. And the question is, what does it mean to you to be a father? Pastor Bram, if we can start with you.
That's a good question. What does it mean to me to be a father? Because I was raised by a father that went out to Vietnam at the age of 18. Sunday school teacher, raised in the church, and found himself addicted to heroin. When he came back from the war, put his life back together, but buried down deep inside of him was still that urge to use drugs. No matter how far he ran or how far he tried to get away from it, it was there. But it was a wonderful provider. I love my father. I know he would do anything for his family. So to me, I took those strengths with the weaknesses. And for me, fatherhood was making sure I was there, making sure my girls knew I loved them. But there was a period of time when I couldn't be there because I was incarcerated. But through that incarceration, I wrote letters, I sent birthday cards, I stayed in contact, just so they would know that I loved them. I wasn't there, but I loved them. And then when God made it possible for me to come home to reconnect with them, my oldest daughter was 13. Next daughter she was 10, and one daughter was 9. And it was a growing curve for me, even though I seen fatherhood. Now I'm actually being a father, because when I left, they were all babies. And now I'm there every day, getting to play this role in their lives, to help them see what life is, help them see what parenting is through a father's eyes, because they were used to their mother, but they weren't used to someone coming home with the rules. No, it's time to do this. No, we have to do this. No, put that away. It's time for this. And that's what I see the father being. The mother is the backbone, but the father is definitely the foundation. And you need that, because the father teaches you how far you can take things. He is that the person that lets you express your emotions, helps you talk through your emotions. Wanting to know why you're angry, wanting to know why you're upset. So yes, fatherhood it was a blessing. Definitely, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I want to expound and actually infuse the first biblical scripture that I pulled regarding this. Because Proverbs 22:6 says, be your child's first teacher in context. It says, train up a child in the way he or she should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So even you being transparent, and when you're coming out full circle from what you endured, and I love how you tell your story and you have no shame about it, because you know how much of a blessing it is, especially to men, to be able to hear what you endured and overcame. You came in with that mindset that I'm now going to even more cement the foundation for what mom was able to do. And I'm going to infuse my role. I'm not going to take a back seat because of what have happened, but I'm going to come in and really gain time and do what I needed to do. So I so respect you for that. The first time I heard you share your story, I was blown away. And I will always respect you for what you endured, but how you came full circle and turned it around into something amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Harris.
Simmons, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood means a lot to me. As I briefly mentioned in the intro, I was raised by a single parent mother, so it was very difficult for me growing up. I was very fortunate that my grandfather stepped up and became a huge male role model for me. But unfortunately, he passed away at the time when I really needed him the most, which was doing young adolescence. But being raised in the church and being around a lot of other men who were also leaders, they was able to help me stay on a straight and narrow path. But for me personally, fatherhood to me means three things: leadership. It means being an effective communicator, and as also based on the verse that you mentioned, being a teacher. So uh, now that I have a young son, I want to show him how to be an effective leader. I want to show him how to communicate and articulate, his thoughts and his words and his messages appropriately. And then I also is big on legacy, so I want to show him how to continue to keep the legacy going. So back to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Joe. And I want to honor you for now taking and assuming a role that you did not necessarily have upfront and personal in your life. But what you said was so critical, that the village rose up for you. And I see that in Jacoby, and I see that in all of you who mentor and guide, for Devon, who you created that space for the youth, for you all to show up and stand in the gap. Because you're absolutely right. By circumstance, everyone does not have that. Every young boy does not have that. But I truly believe, and I know for a fact, and you're a testament of it, when the village rises up and they activate and they stand in the gap and they're there whenever they're needed, however they're needed, it helps to pick up the pieces and put them together more efficiently and perfectly. So thank you for that. And now you're able to be that for your son and create a beautiful legacy. So I thank God for how he brings things full circle. We can't replace, but we can somehow be what is needed. And I'm going to say that again. We cannot replace, but we can definitely be what is needed if we choose to. Jacoby, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Thank you for that question. Fatherhood to me means the world to me. It's something that I love and I enjoy doing every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I get tired, I get bored of being a father. Growing up, and I had that father like structure started with my grandfather. He was, I always looked at him when I was a little boy as this big old giant, and he was like a larger than life figure. That's why, he's known as my superhero. And then along came, my stepfather, who was very pivotal in my role, as well as my biological father. So I grew up with such male mentors, and I was enriched with such male presence in my life growing up, especially my neighbors. My neighbors saw me grow up from as a little boy to now I have my own family. So they always tell me they're so proud of me. So I always grew up with that such deep root in male role models. That's what kind of spearheaded me starting Young Men of Distinction, was to be that beacon of light to young men that wasn't blessed with the situation I was blessed in.
Okay. And thank you very much for that response. And I can also say, and we continue to commend you for establishing a mentorship program and having that sort of option available. Because I know myself in my mental health capacity as a professional, I'm constantly looking for that. Because a lot of time individuals who are troubled, or maybe they do have a good support network, but sometimes, especially young boys, they want to share with a certain person. They pick and choose who they want to talk to. I found that the mentorship piece is essential. They resonate, they connect. It just makes sense for them, and it's very fluid. So thank you for making that available, that now when the need presents itself, I'm not at a loss to say, well, I really don't have anyone. We'll try and figure it out. We have to wait extensively. I now can pick up the phone and I can call you. And I just have to applaud you for making this available, and for everybody else who's doing, for Devon. And I'm going to transition to you with this question, but thank you for putting that in place. because it makes things so seamless and fluid, especially when it's productive. So Devon, what does being a father, what does fatherhood mean to you?
Just to add to what all the guys kind of talked about, fatherhood to me was healing. And I say healing because I grew up like, something like Joe. Joe talked about not having a father present. And so, from the time that I was about 5 years old, I was saving my clothes to give to my son, you know what I mean, that I dreamed of, right? And so, when I had the opportunity to be a father and I realized that I was having a son, for me, it was an opportunity to heal. Like, there's no wounds like father wounds. When a young man cries in therapy, he's crying about something that happened, whether he talks about his father being, a pillar, a beacon of who he wants to be, filling his father's shoes, or he talks about the absence of a father. So, I think that role for me was all about healing, and then also being able to know that I'm learning, right? Learning from my son. My son has taught me more than I've taught him. My son is diagnosed with autism, and for me as a young father, when he got diagnosed, it was a lot for me to take on because I had expectations, as many fathers do, right? So to be able to, allow myself to learn, and my son's words are overrated. My son doesn't speak the way that we do. So words are overrated. My son senses love. He knows how to reciprocate love, and that's his language. So it's powerful in the sense that we can be taught things from, these young little people, and that they have so much impact on our lives.
I think that's very powerful, and I honor you because I deal a lot with the autism and the spectrum. And you're absolutely right. It's a different world, it's a different language, it's a different understanding, but it's also very beautiful. And to also know and understand that most of the individuals diagnosed with autism, they are hugely intellectual, very high IQ, very smart. So there's a lot of possibility embedded inside of that. So thank you so much for sharing. And I want to go to you, Frankie. What does it mean to you to be a father?
So for me, being a father is more so a very special journey. It has allowed me to dig deeper with my salvation with Christ, and also understand that being a father is a responsibility, right? And also understanding the phases of being a father. When I first found out that I was having my daughter Journey, I was ecstatic, right? I was ecstatic. We bought clothes. 5 years before we had Journey, we bought clothes. Like, we had everything on layaway. Like, we applied our faith. We was like, listen, I don't care what the doctors are talking about. We're going to have a child. I can't wait until Journey was born. And when everybody left the room and it's just me and my wife, I'm like, yo, we got to take her back home. She's going to cry tomorrow. What do we do? So that was phase one for me. That was phase one of understanding that, okay, now, Frank, you're a father and she's going to need you. What does that feel like? Like, my father and my mother would always tell me, this is how I used to act. Is my daughter going to act the same way? No, she didn't. She was totally different. She was completely different. So for me, being a father is also understanding and respecting the phases in life of being a father, and adhering to that and observing. I've always felt like being a father, I needed to be stern. I needed to look at my son and say, sir, you cannot cry. No, that's not right. Don't do it. Stop it. But then I digress and say, wait, I can't do that. He's expressing his emotion, but he don't know how to do it. And the only way he knows how to do it is to cry. So like Devon said, Devin said, it's understanding and actually embracing that those tears, and embracing that feeling that my son is expressing, or my daughter is expressing, and catering to that. So for me, being a father is more so a great responsibility, because this is something that I've asked for, and I don't want to meet my creator. My creator says that Frank, you fell short doing that. So that's what fatherhood means to me. Back to you, Miss Sabrina.
That's amazing. And I want to infuse 2 Corinthians 3 and 2 through 4, I believe. But it speaks about exemplifying a good life, which means it's the father's ordination to understand about fatherhood, to understand your role and understand how to execute so you can exemplify that and role model that in front of your children. I thought that Bible verse was very profound. The Bible does not teach us to be random inside of fatherhood or motherhood, but to understand what comes along with this position and execute with proficiency. So I leave that all with you. Exemplify a good life in front of your children, and that calls you to task and to standard. And Reverend Thicklin, what does fatherhood mean to you?
It is my meaning. It is my reason for existing. When you speak of fatherhood, fatherhood is a call. It's the highest designation. Throughout my travels, professional life, oftentimes my bio ends with this. Dr. Thicklin believed that the highest call for a man in this life is fatherhood. It is more important than any award that I ever received. It's more important than any accomplishment I've ever had. It's more important than any platform I've ever been on. Fatherhood is the legacy. It is about legacy. Fatherhood is the imprint and the blueprint that lets the world know that you once have been here. See, fatherhood is the highest office that a man could really ever hold. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it necessary? Absolutely. I represent a father that understands resiliency, who understands that their failures could be part of this building block and a stepping stone. No one gave me a manual. I was raised by mother and father, a father who had a 6th grade education, was not articulate in that sense, but was full of wisdom. My father accomplished something that I did not. My father and mother was together their entire lives that I know them. I didn't have that feat. I am a divorced father. I've been multiply divorced. And so I never forget, I knew that would hurt my dad. I didn't want to tell him. I then lived in Florida. He was in Alabama. And I told mom, but I didn't want to tell dad because I didn't want to let down his legacy. And so after the decision was made, I then had to really pray, because being a man of God as well, what is it that I can hold on to that dad had shown me? And what he had shown me was how to be a great father. So that task was upon me. How do I raise eventually my children together, although 2 was from one marriage and the other 3 was from another? And I will tell you, I speak all over this country about fatherhood because my transparency and the ability to be resilient. And I look today at my legacy of my kids, and they're the ones who tell me, Dad, thank you. Thank you for your example. You've shown us how to be vulnerable and transparent. I give them 2 main lessons. The secret of one's success or failure can be found in their daily routine. Secondarily, understand this, that fathers, we are important. The last scripture in the Old Testament speaks to fathers. And he says to us, he said, before that great and dreadful return of the Lord, he said, I shall return the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I smite the earth with a curse. The enemy wants to create fatherlessness in our society. But I'm telling you, fathers are raising up and they are rising up. And you need to know that you don't have to have a PhD to be a great father, but you have to be a man that's willing to be learned, to love, and to grow. And so I say that today, it's my greatest identity. You can take every award that I've ever had, and it matters nothing to me, because my legacy is not in my awards. My legacy is that I've been a father to my children.
That is so very beautiful and powerful, Pastor. And I just want that to resonate, not only with the guests on this panel, but within the community, that there has to be something more than accolades and a pat on the back and all of these different things that all of us look for at some period of time in our lives. Yes, it's nice to accomplish things, but I think it's very important what we put our emphasis in as it relates to accomplishments.
Absolutely.
So I want to infuse this about provisions, because 1 Timothy 5:8 was also an impactful Bible verse for me. But it speaks to the man making sure he makes provisions for his home and he takes care of his family. And the Bible speaks that if you do not do so, you are denied faith. And it says, if you are unbeliever. So it's like God is not even seeing you as inside of his ark of safety or having that respectful nature with you, because it is a testament to a man to really want to take care of his family. And I'm going to be very transparent. I shared this the other day on the show and it'll come out tomorrow, but I'm going to share it now because I think it's going to help cement this. My father acquired or achieved a 6th grade education. Back in the day and time where they had to work in the fields, they really didn't place much emphasis on school. It was more about working and surviving. So he managed to develop a landscaping business and do very well by all testaments. He was able to secure accounts over in Palm Beach. I remember riding over in his station wagon full of tools and all of these things, and just being so enamored with the mansions and different things that we would pass by. And it was by just hearing a conversation one day. I was actually over because I would go over, kind of help him sometimes and just play around. I would go and look on the beach and just have a good time. I just kind of had free range like that when I was with him. And I overheard him talking about how much he got paid. Now I'm thinking mansions, Palm Beach, he's making a bunch of money, but come to find it wasn't even $20 an hour. So when I came into that understanding, I'm just completely upset. And he's looking at it. I just really made such a big deal about it. I was emotional. I was angry. I'm like, how dare someone who's rich, treat you like this, et cetera, et cetera. And he actually put me in the car and he drove me away because I was making such a big scene about it. And he bridled me to calm down. And he said, listen to me. He said, what I make and what I've been able to do with my 6th grade education allowed me to take care of my family. He said, there's never been a time I wasn't able to put food on the table. There's never been a time that my lights were turned off. He said, we had challenges, but as a man, I had to put my pride aside and do what I needed to do for my family. So he said, don't you be ashamed. He said, don't you be upset. He said, I want you to honor the father you have and the man you have. And he said, you know what else? I want you to look for this in the man that you choose. He said, because you'll never have to worry, because that man will always do whatever is necessary to do within the right frame to make sure that his family's okay. So I leave that with each man who's listening, young man to come, anyone who's a contingent to have a child birth, make provisions for your family and do what is appropriate. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go on, and I'm going to start with Adrian. And I know what is your perspective on the absentee father? We all know that it's a concern. We all know that it's an issue. But I'm going to go a little bit further, because my piece in society today has become solution oriented. So what do you feel is the reasoning or contributing factors to absentee fathers, and what do you feel is the solution to this? Adrian?
That's a great, I'm happy you asked me that question, because I've dealt with this as a topic on a number of platforms. Before I answer the question, though, I just want to say to Dr. Thicklin in how much I appreciate him and his words, in addition to what others have been saying on the panel. From the time I've known Dr. Thicklin, interestingly enough, I have an amazing father, but he's always felt like my father. His presence of fatherhood is so dominating that when I interact with him, I feel like I'm with my dad. It is such a safe space for me. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but I just wanted to share that with you.
Appreciate that.
The question about absent fathers is, especially in the Black community, a lot of times it's actually more myth than it is truth. Black fathers are actually the most present fathers in homes that are split homes, where you have the mother and father who are living apart. So you hear a lot of conversation, even from President Obama with his organization, talking about, the issue is absent fathers. And it's actually not that accurate. What happens is absent fathers, when you look at the data, it shows there's this little part that makes it look worse than what it actually is. Homes that have where a father has multiple children has children from multiple women is where the data begins to skew. Right. Because the numbers are counted over for each child. Do you have a father present for daily activities? Is a father able to read with you? Do they bathe you? Do they feed you? And a father that has multiple children from multiple women cannot be in the same place at once. So what happens is, so if you're dealing with a father who, let's say, has two children by two different mothers, those two children now gets counted in the same. So he's 100% present with one, and he's 0% present with others. But that, depending on the day, he might be with one on one day and one another. So it becomes 50-50. So now he's being viewed as being 50% present instead of being 100% present. And now we'll say that he's not being as present as he could be. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind when it comes to the data. Overall, though, I always find it interesting when people talk about bad fathers, because I don't know them. I don't know bad fathers. It's for some reason I've been graced with a circle that has good fathers. I hope I just emanate, you can't be around me if you're a bad father. Because I don't really, I hear these tragic, horrid stories, and I'm like, who are these guys? Where are they coming from? I don't know them, even though I do know of them. And unfortunately, a lot of times we end up preaching to the choir, because we, being very active fathers, are not around or in the presence of fathers who are not being as active. But the data is skewed, but in general, though, what the data also shows is that when fathers are present, our children are less likely to be criminally active. When our fathers are present, they grow up with, in a lot of instances, a sounder peace of mind. They have less, can potentially have less mental health challenges. So the presence of the father is definitely impactful. But I think one of the reasons why, and I'll wrap up with this, I think one of the reasons why our fathers are absent when they are is because I believe in a lot of instances, the mental health issues, the disappointments, the depression, the anxiety, those fears that those men are facing have not been dealt with, and they don't know how to deal with it. It goes back to the matter of showing emotions and crying. They don't know how, and they were never. They may not have received the support they needed as they moved into it, and now their way of responding to the issue is to be absent, but it also shows the need for their presence in terms of support.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's very profound. And I see all of you like bing, bing, bing. I see hands. So Pastor Thicklin, I'm going to acknowledge you, and then I'm going to go to Pastor Bram. But the powerful Adrian, and I love that you, because we lead a lot on statistics, but in a lot of ways, statistics are skewed and they are not sound. It's just a general point of reference. But to also say that when men are there, they are present and they are impactful, because I personally experienced that and I know that it is true. And I also see the offset as a mental health professional for what it's like when the man is not there. So I tell women all the time, you may be able to get past this point, but please trust and believe that your child or children are impacted, especially if they play a role in the father not being able to be the father that he desires them to be. Okay, Pastor Thicklin?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, and thank you so much to Adrian. This is such a topic for me, because I do believe that what we have to understand is this: that society oftentimes labels men in a way that is very unfair in terms of it. Even what Adrian said was so on point. We have to understand the fact that when society literally, especially for a Black father, let me put it this way here. We can go back to slavery, the impact of ripping families apart, the reward system for having a man absent served a particular policy in our country at one time. And so inside of that, the celebration of fatherhood oftentimes is not as great. We see oftentimes Mother's Day, everything is everywhere. Father's Day, okay, in terms of that. Okay, they're only a month apart, but we see the whole difference in the way things are acknowledged. But here's the thing I say to the absentee father, that oftentimes the absentee father is not absent because he wants to be absent. You can have a father that is there, and his name is Sam, silent and missing. It is how does he adapt to and focus in on that role. I believe this: As men, we have to help other men understand about fatherhood. That, brother, you don't have to be a professional father, but you've been gifted with the ability to bless your children. Children love the presence of their father, the presence. And we have a society that, guess what happened? A brother is no longer with the mother or the wife. And the first thing that happened, I'm going to put you on child support, period. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And the child support system oftentimes turn them into this more or less this paycheck than being a father. So you have some brothers that believe this. He said, hey, I'm giving her child support. She's getting a check. I bought my kids presents. But we have to understand the power of our presence over present. And we have to be able to model that. And so when I talk about absentee father, we have to be very careful to not label them. We have these things that, and women, I mean, sometimes you're very hard on men. Y'all call him deadbeat dad, dead broke dad. He's just dead. Well, let me say something to you. With a little word of encouragement, allow him access to his children. Don't make him feel like he's got to choose between $1 and present. Maybe he is struggling at the moment, but the dollar is not the only thing that he can provide. He can provide his presence, his wisdom. So I say it in this manner here, for the absentee father, they don't have to remain absent. They can be present, but we have to open that door and meet those brothers halfway, because oftentimes they're dealing with rejection. They're dealing with failure. And I close by simply saying this. We grew up in a period of time, we had 3 fathers. That was our role model. We had Fred Sanford and Son. Okay, all right, so check it out. We had James Evans from Good Time, okay? And then, it depends on what era, we had Heathcliff Huxtable. You choose which father that you are. Somewhere along the line, all of us has been one or the other.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. And I want to co-sign that by saying this is a crying call to the women, especially the mothers who have an issue with the man that they have created a child with. It is our testament as women that we have to be able to let things go, and we have to be able to sacrifice for the betterment of our children. So I want to say that whatever you have resting inside, whatever you're holding on to, make sure it does not become a detrimental legacy for your child or children. If they should choose not to engage with their father in that way, let that be their decision, but let it not be because you prompted and orchestrated and created all of these things that I promise you, on the flip side, it's a professional like myself who's now trying to help them navigate their way through it. Don't do it. Think about your children, relinquish and sacrifice whatever you feel for the betterment of that innocent child or children. Pastor Brown?
Yes, first I want to say thank you for the work that you do, and Mr. Weston that works in the mental health aspect of.
Devon.
And yes, thank you. That is wonderful work needed in our community, because what we don't, a lot of times we don't understand is that we have been so marginalized, and the ripple effect from slavery has just caused us to not be able to deal with our emotions. And the scripture you read, train up a child in the way they should go, that scripture is very important, because what the Hebrew parents did, they would chew the food to break the food down to make it easier to digest, and then they would give the food to the child. And at the same time, that's how we break life down to give life to the children, so that it could be easily or better digest. Like the father on Facebook having to talk with his daughter that you couldn't kill because of your skin color. And she couldn't understand that, and she just broke down in tears and cried. But that is how we have to break life down as fathers to our children, so that they could digest it. That was it. Thank you, Mr.
I appreciate that. And I want to go here for Devon and anyone else who wants to chime in that understands the impact from a mental health perspective. It's come out as a solution that men need to now attend. If there's disappointment, if there's sadness, there's a sense of being overwhelmed, men need to attend to these things and not just let it fester, not just ignore it, and not just walk around systematically broken. So Devon, what would you say as a form of encouragement for the Black male, the young male in the community, about self-attending and self-care and mental health awareness?
Ooh, where to start, right? Um, I think there's so many different levels in a sense where to start from, because again, I'm a firm believer on meeting people where they are, right? So a lot of times I think about how I usually get referrals as a therapist, right? Rarely do I ever get a referral that's led by a man seeking service. It's usually a mother seeking service for her son, a spouse seeking service for her husband, an aunt seeking service for her nephew. Like, it's never usually led by the man. So I think when it comes to being able to, and I always make a point to have them involved with the process, because again, it's like fishing for a man instead of teaching a man how to fish, right? Because again, we don't usually come equipped to be able to, one, ask for help, and then also be able to ask for help when it comes to, the psychological pressures of the world. There's different factors that play into just being a man and then also being a father. We talked about it as the stigma of being an absentee father. That weighs heavily on a man, and that could be a very traumatic experience for them, just to have to deal with the fact that, maybe they're up against breaking generational curses, and then something happens to them where they're not able to be involved as they want to. They're not in the household. So then again, they have to live with that stigma of being absentee, right? So I think there's a lot of factors that play into it, and just, being able to tell young men that, be open to understanding that there's people that will meet you where you are. You don't have to come equipped with all these, different knowledges and different things as a father, as a man, but there are people along the way that can definitely be a mentor, be a support, and just be a listening ear sometimes.
And I want to tout you as one of them. I want to make sure and emphasize that you are a go-to person, as well as everybody else on this panel. But just to be able to have someone guide and navigate you to be figuring out how to put it all together. One of the most difficult pieces that I've found for the therapeutic journey or anything in that realm is figuring out where to start. So if you can connect with somebody who really knows how to help you navigate through it. And the thing is not for the individual to tell you, because no one can tell you how to heal. No one can tell you what is necessary for you to do, but systematically we can help guide you and help you figure that out. I want to say something that you said about not communicating, because I believe that breakdown, especially when something's gone wrong inside a relationship between a man and a woman, we're left to assume a lot of things that are not true. And this man is broken over here. This man is downtrodden. This man is hurting. And this woman over here is like, he doesn't care. And it makes no sense. So it's like Mars and Venus going on, and everything is contrasting. And that's why I emphasize co-parenting and the need to do it positively. And one fundamental piece of that is being able to communicate.
Yes.
Whatever your reality is your reality. But if you've never stated it and I've never considered it, there's never going to be a meeting of the mind. Jacoby, what would you say about that?
Thank you for that question. I would definitely say to that is, can you repeat it one more time? I'm sorry.
It's just basically the need to seek other services. So like mentorship, when do you see the referrals come in or the need really arise, and for men to be able to say, okay, I need to refer my son, or I need to sit down with Jacoby and try to figure some things out? How would you recommend they engage the process, or when you see it most likely to take place?
I would say try to pay attention to your son or daughter. Don't necessarily assume that everything's okay. Try to build that relationship with them and kind of pick up on their signs. If you know your child better like the back of your hand, something's off, something's not wrong, something's wrong. So you should watch his or her actions to make sure, just pick up on certain things, and to make sure that you are pivotal and make sure you get them the help. Don't wait until they're at their last end of their rope and then they feel like there's nobody there to help them. That's where, like I said, always make sure you're paying attention and watch out for the warning signs for your children.
Thank you very much, and I do agree. Adrian, I'm going to let you do the final counterpoint on that, and I'm going to go to Frankie. Go ahead, Adrian.
I just want to add, and for the men, I like that Jacoby touched on how they can assist their children. And for the men who need the assistance, I think I'm going to put the responsibility back on us a little bit more. And when I say that, what I mean is, superb folks like Devon as a mental health therapist, and Dr. Thinklin, who does this kind of work, and Pastor with your background. I believe that what we have to do, and I'm myself, I deal with conflict resolution. I'm a conflict resolution practitioner, so I deal with these aspects as well, is being vocal in letting men know that we are resources that they can come to. And I know that may sound like, okay, well, people know about my business. I think we have to continue to put that message out there. Hey, if you're looking for someone to talk to, I'm available. Hey, Man Anonymous, hit me up. Let's talk. If you need somebody, I have these services. And I think that would begin to soften that concrete a little bit more, to as men continue to know that there are spaces we can go. You see it enough times, like, let me just go ahead and give Adrian a call. Let me go ahead and give Jacoby a call, Dr. Thicklin a call. And I think that's one way that we can continue to chip away at that historical idea of men not needing to have to go outside for help. They got to be the help.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it as well. So what I'm going to do now is this, because we've actually gained time from where we started a little bit late. And we're going to get ready to round this out with Jacoby's consent. For the final question, I'm going to start with Frankie and Joe, and then I'm going to let anyone else who feels that they would like to chime in to do so. But Frankie, your background resonated with me. And I know for a fact the homeless population, men returning from prison stints, re-entry, and all of this, there's a level of brokenness, and there's a lot that comes along with that territory. So I want you to speak to those individuals that may be watching or may watch this on replay, and they fit into that mold where, whether it's substance abuse or whether it's homelessness or whether it's some level of brokenness by societal standards, what is your recommendation for them finding their way back home, per se?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. So for me, I'm gonna start off by being vulnerable and letting you guys know where I come from and who I am, and what got me to this point right now. I dealt with depression. I dealt with suicidal thoughts. I dealt with addiction. I dealt with not knowing who I am, and still to this day, I'm still trying to figure out who Frankie Pierre-Paul is. And what I mean by that, right? I feel like I've known myself and my purpose for a couple of years. God introduced me to who I am probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm still trying to get to know the essence of me, the essence of my being. My word to you would be to just be yourself and try to figure out who you are and try to figure out your strengths, and also embrace your weaknesses, right? Somebody might look at you and label you as a homeless person, as a bum, but there's another person out there that's going to label you as John, as Christina, as Earl, as Bobby. And when you tend to understand that who you are, and you tend to understand your essence, you tend to embrace your flaws, and you tend to try to magnify through those flaws, right? While growing up, I always felt like I was young. I always felt like I looked young. I always felt like I needed the beard like Mr. Devon has. I always wanted that big beard. I always wanted to look like a man, you know what I mean? And I always used to pray to God, like, why you always making me look so young? I feel like when I go out there and I try to talk to somebody, they're gonna look down on me and like, boy, you don't know what you're talking about. But yet when I tell them my age, they're like, wow, this kid is seasoned. But I tend to realize, and I tend to understand and embrace the fact that God allowed me to have this vision so I can reach out to the young ones and let them know that I've been there, right? So when you can embrace your past and you embrace your flaws and embrace what you've been through, and I'm pretty sure Pastor Angus can speak to that. You tend to use that as a pillar. You tend to use that as your your guidance. As, man, I've been through this already. I get it. I understand what it feels like to try to kill myself. I understand what it feels like to be addicted to something. I get it. I have an addictive spirit. I get it. So what you're going to do from that point, you know what I mean? So what I can say to anybody that's listening right now, what I can say to anybody that's going to listen to this, embrace your flaws. If you embrace your flaws, God is going to take you through this journey or your journey, and he's going to blow your mind. But at the end of the day, you have to embrace yourself. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a very, very long life for you. So that will be my word to you guys. And I'm sure the seasoned individuals in the Zoom call can elaborate. Back to you, Miss Sabrina.
I want to honor you, Frankie, first of all, for your transparency. One of the most proficient and factual pieces of wisdom that I received at the graduate level of my study was a professor who told me to always lead with your story when you can. He said, when you lead with your story and your truth, you're impactful and you're able to connect with people and draw them in. And it makes people want to listen to you and understand what you have that they may need and might be able to benefit from. So for today, I promise you, I'll be calling you because I understand that people who are in a broken and downtrodden state, they don't need judgment. They need somebody who they can connect with and relate to and who's going to grab their hand and say, I understand. Is going to sit there with them and let them cry or whatever, but outside of judgment. I'm going to meet you right where you are. And I believe Devon said that earlier, and we're going to do a good work and get you where you need to be. So I promise you, my brother, I'll be calling you. And thank you for your transparency. Mr. Simmons, what would you say to that question?
I can, first I'll start by picking up the same thing that Frankie said, in the sense that, you have to be willing to be open, be transparent, and, everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. So what we need to realize is that everything in life is a team game. Everybody has their strengths, everybody has their weaknesses. So I feel like the best way to negate a weakness is to have a strength. And in my book, I talked about that, about how, if everybody comes together, then all of the strengths are taken care of, and all the weaknesses are taken care of. But I think what's really important is just reaching out to people, especially when you struggle, because similar to Frankie, from 2010 to 2012, I had a mild depression myself. I was unable to find work, and a lot of times as men, we define who we are based on what we do. I was having a hard time trying to find work, not really feeling good about myself. And I was trying to figure out, where do I go from here? Is this the end? God, are you just going to drop me off here? Like, what am I supposed to do? I didn't have any suicidal thoughts, but I kind of just wanted to suffer. I wanted a pity party. I just wanted to sit in it. I just wanted to wallow in it. But what really got me back on my comeback trail was I was reading a lot of books. I was watching a lot of positive YouTube videos. I was taking a lot of walks in nature. I was talking with God. I was seeking God. I was reading the Bible. So a lot of those things really helped me. But I feel like if I wasn't a part of the stigma, or if I knew that there's somebody I could really talk to without being judged, I think that would have probably made my transition and my process smoother, on my road to recovery. Back to you, Sabrina.
What's the name of your book, please? What's the title of your book?
It's called Mad Money, 12 Foundational Principles to Make More Money in Half the Time with Half the Stress. And it was just basically, written very simply on how to make more money and some of the steps that I used from when I was broke to, get myself back into corporate America. And it was just inspired by a young gentleman that I met as when I was featured on your show. It's just a young gentleman that I met, young African-American man. He was just trying to find a job, really just needed some help. And he was really on my mind. He was really on my spirit. And then I went home and I was like, okay, I overcome a mild depression. He's trying to find a job. If I was starting over, what would I do? Sat home, God showed up, had divine intervention, 12 principles showed up, and I wrote the book.
And I want to say to each of you right now, you've helped me as a professional. And I'm always open to learning. I'm always gleaning from other people. I've made that a standard in my life. But what you've shown me is how essential it is for the male to be there for the male. What you've shown me is I don't have the male perspective. I don't have what a male embodies. So I should be in a lot of instances making connections instead of assuming that I'm the proper cure for what ails. So this has been powerful for me today. And what I'd like to do for everyone else who desire, I want you to end this. Let's end this today in preparation for part 2 to come. For a good word for a man who's broken, for a man who's downtrodden, for a man who just doesn't understand which way to go, or he feels like he's overwhelmed with pressure, or he feels like he's disappointing his family and he does not know what to do. Pastor Thicklin, what do you say to that man who's listening to you?
No, Sabrina, I say to that man, as I say to everyone now, the greatest fear for any man is the sense of inadequacy. I want every woman to hear that. When a man feels inadequate, you rob him of everything. He doesn't need anyone to double team him to reinforce his inadequacy. He needs someone to see his strength. In other words, we need to be able to encourage a man that even in his weakest point, that we see potential. We see that he's able to. Keep in mind that he's at a season, an intersection of something in his life. This is not necessarily the exit where he gets off at, but this is just where he is right now. So we have to come alongside that man, that brother, in this term, help a brother out. We have to do that with men because we know that we're going through things. It's all right to look at him, and he may not have it all together. But hey, brother, let me holler at you, man. It's okay, man. I know you're going through some stuff. Even if it means sometimes I've had to help men out without having any word. Put something in his hand. Hey, man, go have a good time. Go do what you want to do for your daughter. I know where you are, man. Being able to validate him, even in his weakness. Remember the words of Dr. King, who simply said this. He said, the measure of a man is not, you don't measure a man where he is in the time of comfort and convenience, but where he is in the times of conflict and circumstances. We have to be compassionate enough to look at a brother and say, man, I got you. I am my brother's keeper. Let's not label, let's lift up.
And you know what, you're speaking to the women as well, because by
Absolutely.
nature, we want to see fault. We want to sit in judgment. We want to rest in what we feel is not going right. But to tailor that and flip that around and say, even though I see that you're troubling or struggling during this time, especially from a woman's perspective, I'm still going to empower you. I'm still going to inspire you. I'm still going to lift you up. That is so powerful. And that is not how we how we normally think or how we routinely act. We typically don't do it that way. So thank you for sharing that. Pastor Bram, what would you say to that? What is your message to the broken man, to the man on the comeback, to the man on the incline? What would you say to encourage him?
To the man on the comeback, to the man on the incline, to the man that just feels broken, doesn't feel like he doesn't have the answer, reveal it. Because if you won't reveal it, God can't heal it. If you reveal it, God will send someone there to help you heal. But if you hold on to it, like we've been taught so long as Black males, hey, you got to hold on to that. Hey, you got to figure it out. Hey, sometimes we just can't figure it out because just like this madness that's been happening the last couple of weeks, as Black men, we feel hurt, angry, wanted to tear some stuff up, but at the same time, want to just cry because we didn't have the answer, or we don't have the answer. We wish we could do something to change everything. So, hey, we just got to reveal it. Reveal it, and God is the ultimate healer. He'll send the help.
Amen. God is the ultimate revealer, and he will send the help. So we are never alone.
Yeah.
For those who have to take the time to navigate the path to therapy and everything else, God is always ever present.
Yeah.
Just go to him in prayer. Just establish that, God, I need you now, and I need that help, and I need that substance in this moment because I want to be better. I don't want to implode my life. I don't want to hurt the others around me. I want to be what you've called me to be. And I think that's absolutely amazing if we can humble ourselves. So, Adrian, I'm going to leave the final comment with you, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jacoby to close us out. This has been amazing, and let me impart this in each of you. In each of you, I find substance. In each of you, I find the willingness to respect and honor you. In each of you, I find something that resonates with me and that teaches me. And I encourage you to continue keeping on, keeping on. We need men in these capacities. We need men who are role models. We need men who are authors and in leadership positions and mental health realm and the pastoral realm. We need men who are doing major things to inspire us as women. We look to our men more than you could ever know and understand. And it's my solemn cry this evening. We need you to show up, rise up, stand up, and empower up for us. God bless you. Adrian?
Thank you, Sabrina. It's been an amazing conversation with all of the input. And I love hearing the stories of men because I think the stories of men are how often overlooked. I was married for 9 years and found myself in a divorce after 9 years of marriage and 3 kids, and rebuilding my life and trying to figure out how the heck I got here. And broken. Oh man, broken, broken up in all type of pieces. Wrote some of the best poetry I've ever written during that time.
Yes.
Because it was the only thing left to do was just to pour on paper. And one of the things though that God did for me was one day in my prayer, I was praying and I was going through my regular rote process of praying, and I just stopped. I stopped and I was like, listen, man, I'm kind of tired of praying like this, Lord. You know me. Like, what am I gonna say to you that why are we doing this? You know who I am. You know, can we just get down to the nitty gritty? And I realized that was more of a breakthrough for me. It wasn't a breakthrough for God. It was more
Yes.
like,
I love it.
I've been waiting for you to just talk to me,
Yeah.
and,
I love it.
talk to me regular, not the way you've been talking to me. And God showed me that he was going to rebrand and rebuild my life.
Thank you,
And,
Jesus.
and I've watched him do that over the last 5 years. One of the things in that process that I learned as I began to ask God different questions, and that's important. God showed me, I asked God one day, why was I getting these types of revelations I was getting? And he showed me that I was getting different answers because I was asking different questions. The questions I was asking was why are marriages and situations and relationships this way? And what about this? And what about that? And God began to break things down for me. And I don't know why you ain't tell me this before. You ain't asked. You ain't asked me. Okay, all right. And one of the things God has broken down for me is an understanding and moving through the empowerment conference and those type of things is that a huge part of the problem is that we are defining manhood in a way that God has not defined it.
Thank you.
And there's such a social construct of what it means to be a man that doesn't have anything to do with what it means to be a man. And so much conflict is created in that space of trying to meet this social norm and just being you, right? And you can't get to just be you because you got to be this standard. And so what God began to show me is part of the problem is that men tend to define what manhood is through the eyes of a woman, and women tend to define what womanhood is through the eyes of a man. Imagine if a man could get to define himself for himself.
Amen. Amen.
Imagine if a woman could define herself for herself.
Amen.
You see the power in that? Now it's no more trying to meet any standard. And so the Lord has blessed me, as the brother said, learning to be you. It sounds like such a oversimplified statement, but to the men who find themselves in a space of trying to figure out who they are and where they are and what's going on in life, if you can come into a space of allowing God between you for the believer, and even if you're a non-believer, you got some kind of process going on. If you can allow yourself to come to a space where you understand the importance of defining who you are and whose you are all the much more better for it. It is a space of peace. It is a place that is sanctimonious, and you are able to walk about in this world free.
Yes.
Free from this bondage of what I got to do to be a man. Man, listen, I don't let nobody define. And so I've grown into it, right? And I'm not a man if I don't open a door, do open a door. We could talk about whether a door needs to be open or not, but that doesn't define my manhood. I have learned to pull away all of these social norms about what it is to be a man and allow God to rebuild me into being the man that I am and defining what that means to be a man. And so that is what I would impart to our other brothers out there that are searching for it. Allow God to rebuild you and go through the process of defining what it means to be a man for yourself and for your family and for your legacy. And that is a process that you're able to do on your own, even with the help of others, but it becomes a decision that you ultimately make on yourself, and you'll find a lot more peace in that space than any place else.
Beautiful. There's nothing else that honestly and truly needs to be said on that vein. And with that, I'm going to say God bless you all richly and abundantly. And Jacoby, I'll direct to you to close us out.
First off, I would like to say thank you to these great young men that's on this panel. Thank you for supporting my vision, for having this conversation. This was something that was near and dear to my heart because I wanted to highlight, fathers. I wanted to, my whole goal is to change the narrative. And I've been standing on that morals for a long time. I wanted to change the narrative with our Black men and our youth. And I wanted to change the narrative with our fathers. There are credible fathers out there that are doing amazing work, not only at home, but in the community. And I wanted to highlight you guys, and I wanted to pay homage and say thank you. And to Sabrina, thank you so much for also, being a very strong support system. It's funny to be on a panel with two of my mentors, with Sabrina and Joe. Lord knows, especially Joe. Joe hears my call all the time. We support each other. So we are each other's support system. So, and I'd like to thank my team that are currently watching Facebook Live, for without them, there would be no me. And with the board, I love them to death. And, like I said, there will definitely be a part 2. Like I said, just be on the lookout for that. And like I said, thank you for an amazing event.
Have a good evening. God bless you all.
God bless. Thank you,
God
everybody.
bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful evening.
All right, fellas.
Much love.
All right, Mr. Devon.